So, Wales go in as favourites but come out as losers. Argentina besting them in the quarterfinals. Were they better than us, or were we just poor? Let's dig into it and figure out what happened. So the first 10 minutes were pretty intense. Argentina were coming at us strong and Wales were defending well. It was a little bit of an arm wrestle with neither team really coming out on top until about the 15-minute mark. The balls keep going wide, they keep bringing Zammit into the game, which obviously we all wanted to see, and then the ball comes back. It's a great spot by Dan Bigger, who runs at the defensive line hard. A nice inside ball to North, who's offloads to Gareth Davies. Gareth Davies then pops inside to Bigger, who's running a great support line, goes in under the posts. Wales 7-0 up, and it was a brilliant try, well worked. Then about halfway through the first half, Bigger kicks a penalty to make it 10-0. Wales are starting to wrestle control of this game at this point. They keep going wide, the attack's really good and varied, and from about the 10-minute mark to the half-an-hour mark, Wales were pretty much the only team in it. But in my opinion, this is where the game was lost, right at the half-an-hour mark, between half an hour and 35, when Wales missed 2 lineouts in a row, so the confidence started to get rocked. And then instead of going simple on the third line out, they tried to go for a back ball again. Elias completely overthrows it, and it just takes the pressure off completely. Now, I know it sounds like a little bit hyperbolic to say that we lost the game in the 30th minute because we missed 3 lineouts, but this was 3 visits into the Argentina 22, and at this point we were already 10-0 up. If we'd have got a try out of one of those visits, that would have been 17-0, and you'd be thinking, that is a long way for any team to come back. The confidence would have been up for us, their confidence would have been down, they would have been doubting themselves. Instead, we overthrow, and then it eventually ends up in a scrum, which Gareth Davies gives away a penalty. From that penalty, they gain a lot of territory into our 22 with a good kick. Eventually, the pressure on the line, on the defensive line, Gareth Thomas gives away another penalty for offside, and it's an easy 3 points, and it just brings Argentina into the game. And then from that point, it was like they sort of switched off a bit and almost started relaxing. The organisation and the discipline in defence started being a bit lax. Argentina started playing with the ball more. Eventually, I can't remember exactly what happened. I think it was a kick through, and then their scrum half went to catch it, knocked it on, and then just as after he knocked it on, Josh Adams just dips the shoulder into him. Absolutely no point in doing this. It's just absolute petulance, and I love Josh Adams as a player, but yesterday he had a poor game, I thought, and that was just like, what are you thinking? You've got all that experience. He is a little bit prone to stuff like that, and then he instantly regrets it, and you can tell he was like regretting it. But it was just like, what are you doing? Like, what's your thought process there? I don't know whether he just got caught up in the moment, but it was a cheap shot, and the referee even said that was a cheap shot, and that gives him another shot at goal right in front of the post. He could have even had a yellow card. Like, can you imagine? So it was another shot to go into half time, and then it was 10-6 when we basically dominated most of the half, and then the last 5 minutes we just completely let them back into the game and undid all of the good work. Their tails were up, our heads started dropping, and then, well, from the second half coming out, it felt like there was only one team in it. Within the first 10 minutes of the second half, they'd already kicked 2 penalties, the discipline was poor again, and they were just basically on the attack. They were having all the rugby, and Wales were really struggling just to get any sort of foothold in the game. I actually wrote in my notes, only one team in it at the moment, need a big moment from someone. In fairness, it was a big moment from Thomas Williams. It was scrappy from Wales. It wasn't really any sort of pattern or anything to what they were doing, but a gap opened up for Thomas Williams, who'd not long come on for Gareth Davies, who I believe went off with a niggle. And yeah, it opened up for him, and he's brilliant at that. So that brought us straight back into this game. And then I was thinking, well, we've had our little blip. We've had blips throughout the tournament, and then we've sort of managed to pull it together. And I thought that was going to happen in this game, but, well, I was wrong. For the next 10-15 minutes then, again, Argentina just came straight back at us. We let them come in the game, but they had sort of all of the momentum. Everything was going their way, every little bounce of the ball, it was just all happening for them. And at around about the 65-minute mark, something like that, Wales were defending quite close to the line. It was actually a good defensive set from them. And then, interestingly, there was a clear out. This was probably the only controversial decision really in the game. there was a bit of a clear out where Tompkins was dropping and the Argentina player was attempting to clear out bigger, I think, and it was unfortunate he had a just shoulder contact straight onto Tompkins' chin. Now, when I saw this, I thought that's definitely a yellow and it could be a red. I didn't want it to be a red. I didn't really want it to be a yellow, but to me it was a penalty. They went to the TMO, but the ref and the TMO decided together that it was basically a rugby incident. It was practically unavoidable. It was just Tompkins was dropping. The Argentina player was in control. He was wrapping. He was lowering. It was just one of those unfortunate rugby incidents. I would really like to know what you guys think of this. I personally think it was the correct decision. If it was the other way around and it was a Welsh player, I would be saying, well, what are you expecting him to do? It's just happened. The only issue that I do have is, in the past, that would have been a yellow, potentially a red. And maybe, well, they said on the commentary team that they were trying to give the benefit of the doubt to players more often now, which I completely agree with, but it has to be consistent across the board. If they're going to be doing this now, then it has to be consistent, because if something similar happens, maybe in the England game now, and they do get a yellow or a red, then Wales can definitely feel aggrieved for what happened then. But in the grand scheme of things, I completely agree with the decision. But there's no doubt in that was a massive incident, because from the penalty advantage that they would have lost from that, they actually ended up scoring after some real good defence from Wales. They held out for ages, to be fair, but it was just too much pressure, too many penalties, and eventually they give away the try. This made it 19-17 to Argentina, and yeah, Wales just looked, a little bit shell-shocked by this point. They did have an opportunity. Rio Dyer having a really good run from some decent play, a really good break. He potentially could have got the ball away inside, but the inside cover was coming across, so he decided to go on his own left, got the offload, and then I think it was Zammit, run for the corner, and it was an absolute brilliant, world-class tackle from the defender coming across covering. Absolutely brilliant. He basically saved the game for them. And somewhere around here was a real sad moment, Biggar having to come off, because he wasn't 100%. He was sort of holding his chest and stuff the whole game, but he played his heart and soul out. You can't have asked any more from him on his last game. It's just so unfortunate that we went out the way we did, and it's unfortunate that he actually had to go off injured, but what a servant. We'll talk about him in a bit. Biggar being off obviously means Costello's in at 10. Wales are trying to force it, trying to make something happen at this point. They run the strike move where they've been wrapping the scrum half around, which has been working for them through all the game, getting the ball wide. But it's just, what can you say? It's a brilliant read by Sanchez, who just comes in the passing lane, and unfortunately Costello gives almost like a blind pass. That was part of the move, and it's just a great read from Sanchez, and he runs the interception. I thought Rio Dyer might catch him at one point, but yeah, he just had too much of a head start, and that just put the game to bed and killed us off. And that was the point where I stormed out of the room in a strop. So yeah, thanks Sanchez. But yeah, overall quite disappointing really from what we were expecting. I don't know whether it was the moment got to them, the favourites tag, but they just didn't seem at the races once Argentina started wrestling themselves back into the game. And obviously the ill discipline and the misfiring line-outs in the first half is really what I think cost them the game. It's something we haven't really seen from them through the whole tournament, and when you play better teams, they're going to punish you for these things. Now, I think Wales potentially possibly exceeded expectations by getting to the quarterfinals in the first place, but I think in the cold light of day in a couple of weeks' time, they'll definitely look at this as a missed opportunity. But I'm not going to go too deep into it now, because I'm going to make another video about the review of the Wales' World Cup at the end of the World Cup, so keep an eye out for that one. But as ever, we will also look at the players, and I'll give you my thoughts on who I thought played well. I'll start with the backs for a change, because I always start with the forwards. Gareth Davies, I thought he had a pretty good game while he was on. Unfortunately, he went off early, but he controlled it. His kicking was good, and I think the game was sort of like we had our best periods when he was on. Overall, he had a brilliant World Cup, you have to say, and he's probably cemented himself as the first choice 9 now, again, crazily. So yeah, congratulations to him. He's had a really good World Cup and a rejuvenation of his career. But Dan Biggar, what can you say? What a player. He had a good game. He was clearly struggling through the whole game, but he didn't take a backward step at any moment. He was always flying into the tackles, always flying into contact, giving everything he had, like he always did through his career. What a player, what a servant. His kicking was good. He was just good all over the park. It was so unfortunate that he had to go off injured, but like, I don't know what more I can say. He was excellent. Obviously scored his try, which is great for him on his final game, and he was basically the creator, and he ended up scoring it. So yeah, he was great. Maybe would have liked to have seen him grab the game by the scruff a little bit when Wales were sort of falling by the wayside a little bit, but I'm not going to criticise him on his last game. He was great, and yeah, he'll be sorely missed. He'll be a huge miss. I think he's been a super underrated player for Wales over the past, 10 years. I think he's been well underrated. Well, maybe not underrated, but maybe underappreciated at times because of the way he plays the game. But yeah, he's been brilliant. Thank you for your contribution, Dan Biggar, and enjoy the last couple of years of your career in France. But to the centres, Nick Tompkins, George North, I think they both had a good game. I thought Tompkins was good again. I've had to eat my hat a little bit on him. He's had a really good World Cup. I've been a heavy critic of him. I didn't want to see him start at the start of the World Cup, but he's definitely proved me wrong. I really hope he continues to be consistent like this for Wales. Yeah, he's had a really good World Cup. I can't really say anything about it. He's definitely proved me wrong. George North has had a really solid World Cup too. I think he's definitely just made that 13 jersey nice and comfortable now. He was very good with his carries, had a lot of positive carries. His defence was good. Yeah, just they were both really good. That's all I can say. They formed a nice partnership with each other now. I think they've got a bit of an understanding. So yeah, good performance from both. The back three, well, I thought Zammit was good. They made a clear effort to get him the ball in space. Unfortunately, those little chips over the top and stuff like that, those little kick chases through that I was saying, they just seemed to be magnetic to his hands, unfortunately weren't working as much in this game. They covered it really well, in fairness, the Argentinian back three. But yeah, he ended up going to fullback because Liam Williams went off injured, so I'm wondering if that might be something we see going forward. But Liam Williams was pretty good, to be fair. We knew he was carrying injury. His legs were heavily strapped, but he had a pretty decent game, and I do think we missed him when he went off. He's so influential in counter-attacks, and he's so influential in defence. He always seems to put in big hits, but I just think his aggressive play style now is maybe starting to catch up with him a little bit in his later years of his career. But yeah, he had a good game, and he had a good World Cup as well. One player I don't think had a good game, though I touched on it earlier, was Josh Adams. This was probably one of the most poor games I've seen from him in recent years. I think he had a couple of drops. The first tackle he put in off the kickoff was really good, and I thought he is bang up for this. And then I don't know whether he was just too up for it, but yeah, he was just poor all over. He didn't really get much ball in attack. Didn't really notice him until he did that stupid shoulder charge. I understand that he thought maybe he would have had to tackle the player, but once the player knocked the ball on the scrum half, he just dipped the shoulder into him, and he knew he didn't have the ball, so he can't say that as an excuse. But yeah, he had a poor game. I thought he had a good World Cup generally, back to some of his better stuff, but yeah, I think he let himself down today, and I think potentially we could see Rio Dyer starting on the wing ahead of him going forward now. Gatland seems to like him, and I think he's probably deserves a shot, to be fair. But we'll move on to the forwards. I thought the front row was generally good. Gareth Thomas gave away a couple of penalties. Francis was pretty good, I think. Elias was not the best. The scrum was good, like I said, but yeah, the line out was the issue for Elias. He got yanked off at half time for Lake. So he'll be disappointed because he looked like he sort of sorted that out, and like I said in my last video, he was easily the first choice, which I thought was crazy. But yeah, he's let himself down. It's not all on the hooker, but it was a few of them were overthrows. So yeah, the front row was good generally, but the line out was poor. The second rows, Will Rowlands was his usual self, imposing, physical. One or two knock-ons I think he had, but he was pretty solid, as he always seems to be. Adam Beard, I don't know. I just don't know. There's something about him that I don't rate. He got exposed early on I think it was the first 10 minutes. He went for like a lazy charge down instead of just sitting in the line and letting and it ended up exposing us out wide, and Argentina had an early attack from it, and then it was a lazy inside drift, allowed Argentina to get just on his outside shoulder, and they had a little bit of a break from that as well. So yeah, I just don't think he's good enough for what we need at the moment. And when you've got a player as good as Dav Jenkins on the bench, get him on. I just don't think Adam Beard particularly deserves his spot when you've got a young, hungry player who, in my opinion, is better. But yeah, we'll see what happens going into the next year's Six Nations. The back row, it looked good and it looked pretty balanced. We obviously always are going to miss Faletau, but I thought Wainwright was good around the park. He carried hard. He was very busy. He was putting a lot of effort in on the kick chases, which I like. He didn't have an awful lot of ball carries, but yeah, I think it's because Argentina were tending to strangle us a little bit, maybe. But I thought he had a good game, in fairness. But obviously we did miss Faletau. Captain Morgan, he was probably one of his more quiet games. He was still good and solid. It's just, I think, the standards that he's set for himself now. If he's not world class, he's had a quiet game. But he had a good game. I'm not criticising him. He was good. But yeah, like I can't remember if I said this earlier, but when we needed someone, I don't know if he got the team going when it was sort of not working for us. I don't know. Rafael was good. He's an absolute tackling machine. He just doesn't seem to miss tackles. Wasn't as impressive at the breakdown, but I think that's more a testament to Argentina and the way they were at the ruck. But I thought he was good in defence. He made a lot of tackles and made a lot of good tackles as well. So yeah, I was happy with the balance of that back row. It was going to be a question with both of them being sevens, but I think it worked, and that could potentially be the back row moving forward now. But we'll quickly look at the bench. Lake came on. I think he made a good impact, especially in defence. His tackling is just so good. He's so strong. He had a few big carries as well. I think the line-out was pretty good as well when he came on, so that was a positive. I think now he'll probably get a real good chance to nail down the starting position at hooker, because obviously Gatland wasn't happy with what Elias was doing there. So yeah, that was an interesting decision to swap it at half-time. I don't know if Elias was injured, but yeah, the line-out wasn't working, so it seemed like it was that was the reason that Lake came on early. Domachowski and Dylan Lewis, the scrum was pretty good when they came on. I thought Domachowski was pretty good, just generally. I thought Dylan Lewis was pretty good generally as well, even though I criticised his being on the bench in the preview of this game. But I thought he held the scrum alright, because I think that's his biggest issue, and he was quite unlucky not to win a penalty jackal when we were defending on the line. So yeah, I thought he justified his selection, I suppose. Dav Jenkins and Chris Chinza, I've already mentioned how I think Dav Jenkins should be starting. I think he's got a real high energy and a high work rate, so we could see that going forward now into the Six Nations. I wonder if we'll see a bit more of a turnover of young players coming through, the ones who are more on the fringe, like potentially Chinza, who I thought was good coming off the bench. He had a lot of energy, and he was involved quite a lot, because sometimes you don't really notice him when he comes on, but this game I did, so I think he can be happy with his performance. And finally, the three backs. Thomas Williams came on, made pretty much an immediate impact, in fairness, with his try. He's great at that. I thought he was alright without, going otherworldly like we've seen him sometimes when he really breaks a game open once a game opens up. But yeah, I thought he was okay coming off the bench. He'll be happy to get his try, because he's sort of definitely been put as second choice behind Gareth Davis now. So he'll be happy that he made an impact. Costello, well, it's heartbreaking for him, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's just one of those mistakes I would say the young players make. But everyone's can potentially make that decision. He's trying to force it. He's trying to make something happen, and it was just a great read by Sanchez. So there's not really anything you can say. I just hope he's obviously going to beat himself up about it, but I hope he doesn't, because to be honest, I don't think we would have scored anyway. But that's just my opinion. People might disagree with that. But yeah, it's just one of those learning things. It's just something that happened, and hopefully he learns from it. He doesn't beat himself up or lose too much confidence about it. He can just go back and have a good season for the Scarlets, because he's got a real good chance of being our first choice 10 moving forward now. So we're going to have him being on the top of his game, and these mistakes happen when you're young. So yeah, no, I've got no issues with Costello, and he doesn't deserve anyone to give him a hard time. So hopefully people aren't doing that on Twitter, as they've been known to do. And then Rio Dyer, like I said, I think he could potentially be the starting winger moving forward. Now he's impressed whenever he's been on the pitch. I think I wanted Adams to start this game with his experience, just his all-round game. But I think Dyer has definitely just shown that he's ready. Gatland likes him. He seems to mention him a lot, and he seems to do his best to shoehorn him into the matchday squad. So I think it's something we'll see going forward. He's just electric. That's the best way I can describe him. For not a big guy, he just always seems to bust tackles. He's got a good eye for gaps, and he runs hard, and that's all you can ask for. A lot of effort. But yeah, that was the game. That was the World Cup for Wales, unfortunately. Argentina have to have some credit, because they did turn up, and they did probably strangle Wales when we thought it was going to be the other way around. They just took Wales out of the game in that second half particularly. But yeah, as I said, we're out of the World Cup, unfortunately. But I do just want to take 2 seconds to thank everyone who's actually started subscribing and watching the channel over the last couple of months. It's grown way faster than I expected it to, and I really enjoy speaking to the people in the comments. You guys are obviously very knowledgeable about your rugby and stuff, so thanks for contributing, thanks for listening. There'll be more videos coming soon. I've got some good ideas, so stay subscribed and stay tuned, and I'll catch you on the next one.